Every empire swears its promises are unbreakable. Every government insists its currency is solid. And every time, history teaches a brutal lesson. From the ancient Roman denarius to the Argentinian peso, people have watched their financial worlds crumble. Their life savings turn to dust, and their futures dissolve into uncertainty by forces they were told were under control. Financial collapse isn't a fluke. It's a recurring chapter in the human story. The real question isn't whether it can happen. It's what you do when the system you trust begins to fail. The illusion of stability is the most treacherous trap in finance. We see the numbers in our accounts, the crisp bills in our wallets, and we assume they represent a fixed, unchanging value. But currency is not a rock. It is a shared belief. And that belief can evaporate with terrifying speed. That's why studying history is both a chilling and an essential exercise. Every economic meltdown leaves a breadcrumb trail of warnings, a pattern of mistakes, and a playbook for what holds value versus what becomes worthless paper. And if you look closely, you'll find that those who survived weren't the ones with the most blind faith. They were the ones who understood the fragility of the system first. Take Germany after the First World War. The nation emerged not just defeated, but shackled by a mountain of debt. The Treaty of Versailles imposed crippling war reparations, a bill so massive it bled the German economy dry before it even had a chance to recover. The government was cornered, facing an impossible demand with an empty treasury. It was a nation on its knees, searching for a way out of an economic black hole. The leaders believed they had found a simple solution, a way to meet their obligations without making the hard, politically unpopular choices of raising taxes or slashing spending. It was a solution that seemed modern, efficient, and painless. It was the printing press, to pay off the crushing war debts and finance its own operations. The German government, the Weimar Republic, began to print money. At first, it seemed to work. Bills were paid. Government functions continued, but the printing never stopped. More and more marks flooded into the economy, chasing the same amount of goods. It was a classic case of too much money pursuing too few products, and the laws of economics are as unforgiving as the laws of physics. The government wasn't creating wealth, it was diluting it. Every new banknote that rolled off the presses made every existing banknote a little less valuable. It was a slow, creeping poison that soon metastasized into a full-blown economic cancer. Runaway inflation had begun, and the nation was accelerating toward a cliff it couldn't see. By 1923, the situation had spiraled into a nightmare of hyperinflation. The slow creep had become a terrifying sprint. Prices didn't just rise weekly or daily. They began to change hourly. A cup of coffee that cost 5,000 marks in the morning would cost 8,000 marks by the afternoon. Workers demanded to be paid twice a day, rushing to spend their wages before they lost their value. The simple act of buying groceries became a logistical nightmare. Citizens had to haul their money around in wheelbarrows, laundry baskets, and suitcases, pushing mountains of paper cash just to afford a single loaf of bread. The numbers became meaningless, astronomical figures that had no connection to real-world value. Germany was drowning in its own currency. For those who had diligently saved their money, the crisis was a complete catastrophe. Millionaires who had built fortunes over lifetimes of hard work and prudent investment woke up to find their savings had been rendered utterly worthless. A bank account holding millions of marks, once a symbol of immense wealth and security, could no longer buy a single head of lettuce. The paper assets that had promised a comfortable retirement evaporated into thin air. The social contract was broken. The promise that saving and responsible financial planning would lead to prosperity was revealed to be a lie. Wealth, for millions, had become nothing more than stacks of useless, colorful paper. One of the most poignant and famous anecdotes from this period perfectly captures the absurdity of the situation. A wealthy German, a man who had once counted his fortune in the millions, found himself shivering in his home as winter set in. The cost of coal had soared to such astronomical heights that he could no longer afford to heat his house. But he was surrounded by his fortune stacks upon stacks of banknotes. In a moment of grim, desperate irony, he realized the truth. The paper his money was printed on had more practical value as fuel than it did as currency. And so, the millionaire began to burn his cash, feeding wads of worthless banknotes into a stove simply to stay warm. It was cheaper to burn his fortune than to buy a lump of coal. Daily life descended into a state of chaotic primitive. The currency had become a joke, an object of ridicule. Families began to trade goods and services directly, reverting to a pre-monetary system. A plumber might fix a leaky pipe in exchange for a few potatoes. A doctor might accept a chicken as payment for a consultation. Money was no longer a reliable medium of exchange. Instead, tangible assets, food, tools, clothing, and skills became the real currency. In the streets, children who had no concept of value beyond the physical world played with the abandoned bank. They built kites out of 1,000-mark notes and stacked bricks of worthless currency like building blocks, playing with the ruins of their parents' financial lives. The most profound casualty of the hyperinflation crisis wasn't the economy. It was trust. The people lost all faith in their government, which had engineered the disaster. They lost faith in the financial institutions that had held their worthless savings. And most importantly, they lost faith in the very idea of the German mark. They had been forced to learn a fundamental economic lesson in the most painful way possible. Money is a promise. It only holds value because we collectively agree that it does. When that belief shatters, the numbers on the paper become meaningless. The entire system, which seemed so permanent and powerful, was revealed to be a fragile house of cards, built on a foundation of collective confidence. Facing total societal collapse, the government was finally forced to act. In late 1923, it introduced a new currency, the Rentenmark. This was not just another piece of paper. The Rentenmark was backed by something tangible, a mortgage on the entire country as land and industrial assets. Each new note was a claim on the real, productive capacity of Germany. It was a desperate, bold move to anchor the currency to something of genuine value. Slowly, painstakingly, confidence began to return. The public, starved for stability, cautiously accepted the new currency. The barter system receded, and the German economy began the long, arduous process of rebuilding from the ashes. The German hyperinflation crisis stands as one of history's most stark and terrifying warnings. It proved, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that a government's ability to print money is not a source of infinite wealth, but a tool of potential destruction. When abused, it doesn't just devalue currency. It destroys savings, shatters trust, and can tear the very fabric of society apart. The tale of the millionaire burning his cash is not just a historical curiosity. It is a profound lesson about the nature of value itself. The moral of the story is one we must never forget. True value doesn't lie in the ink and paper of a banknote or the digits on a screen. It resides in stability, in the collective trust that underpins a financial system, and in the real-world goods and services that money can actually command when faith in it remains unshaken.